what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another edition of Simply Better Fantasy Football. My name is Anthony Rodriguez. As always, I'm joined here with my friend Brandon Greb.
So,
And in today's video, we are going to be picking up where we left off by talking about week one matchups for your fantasy football teams. In today's video specifically, we're going to be talking about the 4 o'clock games and working our way all the way up to the Sunday night primetime game. With that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. So let's get into the content. All right, so the first game that we're going to be looking at is the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Indianapolis Colts. Brandon, out of these two quarterbacks, which one do you like better and why?
I really think it's early up for discussion. Philip Rivers is my obvious pick here. While the Colts did have a run a top 10 defense the last few weeks of the season last year, I just think at this point there's just so much risk behind Jacoby Brissett that you can't possibly want to start him out there, especially on week one away. So Philip Rivers is going to be my pick there.
I definitely agree with you. I would say Philip Rivers is obviously the better start. However, I do think that the Colts do have a good defense, which is going to limit Philip Rivers, fantasy ceiling in this game. However, I still think he has the potential to finish as a top 15 fantasy quarterback this week. And then on the other side of the ball, you look at Jacoby Brissett. His matchup isn't terrible either. However, we really don't know how this Colts offense is going to function without Andrew Luck. In one of my previous videos, I was talking about Jacoby Brissett and talking about how he wasn't that successful in this Colts offense the first time around. However, with Frank Reich now as the coach, we really don't know if Jacoby Brissett really took that next step and developed as a quarterback, but we'll really find out this Sunday.
Certainly, and I also think for Philip Rivers' case, I think the fact that you don't have a certified workhorse running back now in Melvin Gordon there, that they're not gonna be able to focus on the run as much, because while Justin Jackson and Austin Eckler are solid running backs, neither of them are really great runners on the ground. I don't know how they're going to do against a really good defensive front either. So they might rely on Eckler more in the passing game, who's going to be their starter in a 60-40 split. So I think having those kind of running backs out there is going to influence Philip Rivers' numbers at the end of the day. But I think really at this point they're both kind of long shots to finish in the top 10. So they're just kind of I think last resort options if you need them. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And what do you think about the backfield? I know you talked about it briefly, but which running backs do you like in this game between the Chargers and the Indianapolis Colts?
So personally, Eckler is my top pick just because he's going to be out there the most. He's going to be the guy seeing all the passes. So he could easily finish in the 10 to 15 point range just because of how much volume he's going to get. On the other side of the ball, Marlon Mack also is not a guy that I don't dislike this week. I think it's just because he's also going to get a lot of volume. We have yet to see if he's going to be the 3-down back that the coaches have talked about in the offseason, because Nyheim Hines is a really good pass catching back. So it really remains to be seen at this point if Hines is going to be on the field as much as Mack is. So I think I'd feel safe putting Mack out there just because he is their starter and he should see more volume. At the end of the day, it also depends on how high of a scoring affair this is going to be. So I think I'd feel safe putting Mack and Eckler out there, though, as running back twos this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think Austin Eckler is going to be a solid running back too this week. Obviously, he's going to be the PPR guy. I also think that Justin Jackson could be a good flex play this week, as I think that he has a lot of opportunity, especially in the goal line. Like you mentioned, this is going to be a committee in this Chargers backfield, with Eckler obviously getting the nod in PPR leagues and Justin Jackson maybe in standard, but we won't really know how they're going to implement these backs until this upcoming week. And then on the other side of the ball with Marlon Mack, again, question marks there, but I think Mack could be a solid running back too this week just because of volume alone. And then when you look at the Chargers defense, it's a little banged up. It's a good defense, but it's not nowhere near as the defense where it was last year. Especially losing that's all-star safety back there. It's not nowhere near it was last year. However, I think that Mack does have a good role this week, and I think he can put up some solid RB2 numbers. And then with Nyheim Hines, maybe he'd be a solid flex play in a deeper league just because the Colts may have to pass a lot because they are going against a good offense. But I don't really see much value there until we know how this running back committee is going to be implemented in Indianapolis as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Okay, so
And then
what do you think of the receivers then for this game? What are some receivers that you like?
so Keenan Allen is one of those guys that is locked and loaded. He's good to go as far as off the injury report. The holding him out was kind of just precautionary. He said he would have played if it was regular season. So he's the guy you're going to throw in your lineup. Mike Williams should also be in there as a high upside wide receiver too. Just going off of what we saw last year with his targets increasing and the touchdowns being there. So I don't think we should expect a touchdown every week, but I think the volume is definitely going to be there to support a wide receiver too. Hunter Henry's another guy that might eat into his targets and Allen's targets, but I wouldn't be worried about it at the end of the day. On the other side, T.Y. Hilton, his stock obviously took a hit with Andrew Luck retiring, but I still think as a low end wide receiver too, you can still feel safe putting him out there because he's going to get some volume. But behind him on the Colts side, there's not really anybody else that I really want to play, even in the flex. Like Paris Campbell dealing with injuries, Devin Funchess is just so inconsistent. There's just not a lot to like behind T.Y. Hilton on the Colts offense right now.
Yeah, I agree. My favorite play out of all these receivers is going to be Keenan Allen. Now, obviously, he has the best matchup in the slot, because that's where he plays for the majority of the game. He's going to be lined up against Kenny Moore, which is the slot cornerback for the Indianapolis Colts. And out of their three cornerbacks, he's obviously their weakest one. I think that Mike Williams has potential to finish as a wide receiver two this week, but I don't think he's going to finish as a high end wide receiver two, as I think that Desir will be playing a lot on him, as Desir is that outside cornerback and Williams is that outside receiver. So that's a tough matchup there. And then when you look at the Colts side of the ball, obviously T.Y. Hilton again, he's probably the best option there. This Chargers defense it's all right. Like I mentioned before, it has some injuries. But T.Y. Hilton is a boomer bust player. So not only that, he's also going against Casey Hayward, which is another tough matchup. So, I mean, T.Y. Hilton isn't the best play, but I also don't think he's the worst play either for this week. I think he can finish as a decent wide receiver too.
Yeah, I agree. And then just touching on the tight ends quick. Hunter Henry, you've drafted him. You're going to play him. We still have yet to see what he's going to do post ACL injury, but I still think he's a solid play out there today or for Sunday. And then on the other side of the ball, I know a lot of people were really high on, or some people were high on Eric Ebron for some reason. So you have to see that touchdown regression coming. So I think if you have Jack Doyle on your roster, I think you should feel safe for putting him out there because of the relationship that him and Brissett had, or the chemistry they had while on the field at the same time. That would be my pick at tight end if I had one.
I obviously think Hunter Henry is obviously the best play out of all the tight ends in this game alone. Like we said, the Colts defense is a good defense. And if you watched our last video, we told you guys that we like tight ends against good defenses. So I think Hunter Henry is a no-brainer there. Not only that, with Tyrell Williams no longer in this offense, there's some targets they're missing. And I figure that a lot of them are going to go to Hunter Henry as he's returning to this offense 100% healthy this season. And then on the other side of the ball, you have Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle. Now, I personally feel like if the Colts are going to be successful this year, they're going to have to use Eric Ebron more than they do Doyle. But like you mentioned, this coaching staff, they like Jack Doyle a lot. But I just think that if they want their best chance to win, they need to put Eric Ebron, and we might see that later on in the season. But until we see how these tight ends are going to be utilized, I mean, they're probably tight end twos at best, especially because of the fact that Andrew Luck is no longer on this offense.
Yeah, I think eventually they could turn into, how the Eagles are trying to be as well, incorporating a two tight end approach, a two tight end attack. I think just going off of the quarterback and what we've seen from him, that he should be favored. He's probably going to favor Doyle out there when he's on the field. So, yeah.
So let's move on to the Bengals and Seahawks game. Now, out of the two quarterbacks of Russell Wilson and Andy Dalton, which one do you like in this game?
Oh man, that's a tough choice. I think I'm gonna go with Russell Wilson here. So obviously you have a guy that always finishes in the top six quarterbacks or so, going against a very porous defense. Obviously dual threat quarterback. I don't see how you can't play him this week. On the other side, you have Andy Dalton, who's going to be playing a defense that just added Jadeveon Clowney. That was already a really good defense that has I believe the highest paid linebacker, Bobby Wagner. So I don't think playing Andy Dalton's even an option for most people out there. You shouldn't be doing it, but I think my choice is Russell Wilson there.
Yeah, I would agree. with that statement that Russell Wilson is the better play in this game. Not only is Russell Wilson one of the league's most underrated quarterbacks, in my opinion, but like you mentioned, he's also a dual threat, which is good for fantasy leagues as he does the work in the passing game, but he also gets you some fantasy points with his legs. And then on the other side, you look at Andy Dalton. Obviously, AJ Green's not going to be in this lineup, which I think is going to overall, hinder his fantasy football ceiling there. And then not only that, you look at the Seattle Seahawks defense. I think it's pretty good. I feel like this is also a very underrated defense. They got Bobby Wagner there at the middle linebacker spot. They just traded for Jadeveon Clowney, and they also have Ziggy Ansah on this team, who are both slated to play. So that's definitely going to be a good pass rush this year. And I think that Andy Dalton is in some serious trouble this week with the Seattle Seahawks defense.
Yeah, it's gonna be a rough go. And I think the presence of Jadeveon Clowney is gonna really impact Joe Mixon's value as well. So I think this week you have to really lower expectations on Joe Mixon. He's gonna be running against the front that like you said, has Ziggy Ansah as well. So unless Seattle gets up to a huge lead, which they haven't been known to do, I don't really see Mixon having a lot of value at all. I mean, it's gonna be really rough, and who knows how much they use Bernard in there because they just signed him to an extension. So we really have yet to see the kind of workload that Mixon's going to get, especially with the new coaching staff. So I think it's not really as risky as say as playing a guy with that's not a starter, but I think you have to lower what you expect from Mixon this week against a good defense, especially in Seattle.
So I'm guessing you like Chris Carson better this week than Joe Mixon.
Yeah, by far. I mean, just hearing all the news out of camp, like Chris Carson is the man over in Seattle. So as long as he can stay healthy, that man can easily finish as an RB1 like he did last year. So yeah, Chris Carson's going to be the better play in this one. I'd say Rashad Penny could potentially be a flex play, but as most other people that we talk about, it's really just kind of a toss up at this point because we don't know how the workloads of teams are going to work out. So I guess if you had to play Penny, if you wanted to play him, you could throw him in the flex. But Chris Carson is going to be the guy here if you want to pick a running back out of this backfield for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Chris Carson is going to be a solid RB2 this week. When you look at the Seattle Seahawks offense, this is an offense that, finished top 5 in running last year when it came to, rushing attempts and touchdowns. So, I mean, you can't really sit Carson there. Not only that, this team has openly expressed that they are going to continue with that run first mindset. So that obviously is a plus for Chris Carson. And then when you look at the Cincinnati Bengals defense, I mean, it's nothing really that's going to scare you. It's a solid defense, but it's definitely not going to hinder Carson's overall fantasy value. And then on the other side with Rashad Penny, I also think that he can be a solid flex play this week in deeper leagues. As I already mentioned, this is going to be a team that runs the ball a lot, and obviously it's a committee in this backfield, but I think there's definitely enough touches to go around. And then on the other side of the ball, Joe Mixon, his matchup, I mean, you probably took him in the second round. So, I mean, you're probably going to have to play him as he's probably your running back 2 also. If you went wide receiver heavy in your drafts, he might be your running back 1. So he might, you might have to play him. And I think you should throw him in the lineup there. But I wouldn't expect any crazy fantasy numbers from him this week. All right.
So
So what do you think of the wide receivers in this game?
so they're both kind of in the same situation as far as having one main guy and then everybody else is kind of there. So starting with the Bengals, so we have Tyler Boyd, who uh, I was pretty high on during the draft process. So I believe he's set up for success there as far as having Andy Dalton healthy, not Jeff Driscoll. So he's gonna just be spoon fed targets. So I'm a fan of targets. Even if they're not gonna be great targets, but you figure there's nobody else on that roster that's really worthy. I mean, you have John Ross, who missed the entire offseason with injuries like usual, and then you got an undrafted free agent, Damian Willis. We have no idea what he's going to bring to the field. So I think you can feel safe putting Tyler Boyd out there, and the same goes for Tyler Lockett. So we have DK Metcalf, who also missed a lot of preseason with injuries. David Moore is gone. Jerron Brown got cut, and then he got brought back. So I mean, it's really just, who knows how much trust they have in him anyway. So I think the Seahawks are definitely going to lean more on the run in this game because they did last year and they had a lot of success with it. So I think if you're going to play any receiver, I think Tyler Lockett is going to be the only obvious choice there. But you really can't go wrong putting either of them in your wide receiver 2 spot this week, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, when I look at Cincinnati, obviously Tyler Boyd without my bad, not Andy Dalton. Without AJ Green in this offense is the number one option. However, what we saw last year was that Boyd wasn't as good on the field without AJ Green, so we might see that this week. However, he is going against Shaquille Griffin this week, who is the cornerback for the Seattle Seahawks. And with that being said, he's an all-right corner, but he's not a shutdown corner. But still, I think that the Seahawks do have a good defense. So, I mean, I'm not crazy about Tyler Boyd this week, but I think he could finish as a low-end wide receiver too. And then when you look at a sleeper option for the Cincinnati Bengals offense, in my personal opinion, this week is Damian Willis. Now, this is a rookie out of Troy. This is a guy that I actually told you about during the offseason that I actually like. And with AJ Green out of this lineup, he's really going to have an opportunity to solidify himself as a wide receiver option in this offense. So that actually might be a guy that's going to be an early waiver wire pickup for you, especially with AJ Green not in the lineup. So that's definitely a name to keep in mind. Then on the other side of the ball with Seattle, obviously the number one option in this offense is Tyler Lockett. He really has the best rapport with Russell Wilson out of all these receivers. Not only that, he is a very good, deep play option, as in like he gets these big plays on the field, which is also another plus. Also, last season he had a lot of touchdowns, so this is a guy that Wilson depends on a lot, and he plays in the slot a lot. So there's going to be a lot of favorable matchups there. And then when you look at DK Metcalf, this is a rookie, obviously with a lot of raw potential, especially in an offense that's coached by Pete Carroll. However, he was dealing with, I think, a knee problem, so we don't really know how healthy he is right now. I think he has touchdown upside in this game, and I think he's going to be a red zone threat for this Seattle Seahawks offense down the stretch. However, as of right now, Tyler Lockett is probably my favorite receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, and I think he's a good play this week as well.
I think they're both solid plays. I think the point about Boyd not being too great without Green, it was just such a small sample size that at this point it's just so hard to predict what we're gonna see, especially with Andy Dalton out there. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as far as tight end goes, I don't know. Would you want to play Tyler Eifert this week? I mean, he's healthy.
If
I'm kind
you're
of split on where I feel about Tyler Eifert.
if you're looking thin at tight end, I think Tyler Eifert is a good play. Now, obviously, when he's on the field, he produces. Andy Dalton looks for him a lot. The problem is that this guy is never on the field and he gets injured a lot during games. However, it's the beginning of the season. He's obviously healthy. So, I mean, until he gets injured, and if you're looking good, thin at the tight end spot, I think that he could be a good play this week, especially against the Seattle Seahawks defense. And then on the other side, I mean, I'm not too sure if Will Dissly is healthy yet. I know he was banged up a little bit. If he's not, then Nick Vanette's going to be the tight end. Um, this is a guy that probably has touchdown upside, but he's not going to finish as a tight end one. And I'm not sure if you can put him in your starting lineup as well.
Nah, knowing Russell Wilson, he's prone to just making just running out the pocket and just kind of randomly throwing it to guys. So if there's a tight end out, I mean, who knows what tight end he's going to throw to this week? So that's really just the dart throw that you don't want to worry about.
Let's move on to the next 4 o'clock game, which is the Detroit Lions at the Arizona Cardinals. What do you think about this game? What quarterbacks do you like the best?
So I know a lot of people were, a lot of fantasy analysts were kind of hyping up Kyler Murray in the offseason for good reason. Boasts a lot of elements of his game kind of fit around an all-star fantasy quarterback. But I think in this game, I think Matt Stafford would be a safer play. So you're going against a really, really bad Arizona Cardinals defense, and he's also going to be healthy now. He said he played all season last season with a broken back of some sort. So I think you can feel safe putting him out there. Matt Patricia already said that he does not want to overuse Kerryon Johnson, and we already know he's the most talented back in that backfield. But they did bring C.J. Anderson on for a reason. But I don't think either of these guys are going to get a ton of work, especially in week one. So I could definitely see Stafford airing it out quite a few times in this game. Murray on the other side is kind of it's an interesting play, but I feel like if you have Murray, that means that you drafted another guy ahead of him in most cases. But if you didn't, then I think you can still feel okay. Some of the players came out and said that they didn't run the full offense in preseason, so they kind of ran a downgraded version. So I don't think show what they did against the Raiders is going to be what they're going to bring into the regular season. So knowing what Kyler can do on the ground and in the air, and with the weapons around him, I still think you can feel safe as a QB2 this week, maybe a higher upside one, because the Lions defense isn't phenomenal. It's very middle of the pack to a little below average. So I think he's a decent play this week too. So
Yeah, I mean Murray's matchup isn't horrible. Like you mentioned, there was a lot of rumors that this offense really hasn't demonstrated what it's capable of doing. With that being said, with Cliff Kingsbury as the head coach, I'm not really convinced that he's going to be able to elevate Murray's overall game for this season, as he did coach Patrick Mahomes in college, and he really couldn't take Mahomes, his game to the next level like Andy Reid could. So I'm not sure that Kingsbury is going to be able to tap into Murray's potential. With that being said, like I said, this is a good. It's not a horrible matchup. Murray has the potential to finish as I would say QB2, like you said. However, if you have a quarterback, that you drafted higher up and they have a more favorable matchup, you're obviously going to go with that one as, this is a rookie and he's going to be making rookie mistakes. So you have to keep that in mind. And then when you look on the other side of the ball with Matt Stafford, I actually really like Matt Stafford's his matchup this week as the Arizona Cardinals. Their defense is really, really suspect. Not only that, Matt Stafford last season was dealing with a back injury, which really, affected his overall play. Stafford is definitely going to be coming into this season fresh. And with those receivers like Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones Jr., and also Danny Amendola, I really feel like Stafford can, come back to that sleeper, fantasy quarterback level. This is a guy that usually goes late in drafts, in previous years, and he does put up, solid fantasy numbers on certain weeks, depending on the matchup. And I think that this is one of those weeks because when you look at the Cardinals defense, it's not that great.
no, it's not great at all. And I think that's also gonna it'll help Kerryon Johnson and C.J. Anderson's case because it's just not good, and they're gonna be able to move the ball against them. And I don't know. I'm not personally too high on Kerryon Johnson season long just because of his injury, his extensive injury history, and also having C.J. Anderson, and then you have Ty Johnson in the preseason really showing off as a pass catcher too. So Kerryon Johnson is still worthy of an RB2 slot, but I think you have to once again lower expectations for him. You're playing David Johnson, so there's really no questions about that. He's an elite running back if he's getting the really good touches and good situations. So
Yeah, I agree. I think that David Johnson is a no-brainer play this week. The only concern that I have with DJ is that offensive line for the Cardinals really isn't that great. Arizona in the offseason didn't really try to improve that offensive line. So he's kind of pretty much in the same situation as last year, as in he's not really going to be having these, good holes in the backfield that are going to allow him to really be productive. However, when you look at a volume standpoint alone, he is the only running back in this offense. There's not really any running back that's going to take touches away from him. And not only that, when you look at it from a PPR perspective, there is a rookie quarterback there. So Kyler Murray might, until he gets, his feet wet, throw a lot of check down passes, which is also another plus for David Johnson. And then on the other side of the ball, when you look at Detroit, I really like Kerryon Johnson this year. I know a lot of people think that he's going to be in a committee with CJ Anderson, and this honestly might be the case. However, when you look at that offensive coordinator with Bevel there, this is a guy that really likes to run the ball, and I think that's going to help out Kerryon Johnson's overall fantasy value throughout the season. With that being said, with a really good matchup against Arizona, I think that Kerryon Johnson is a good candidate this week to finish as a high end RB2, and even CJ Anderson could probably be a flex play this week depending on how the game script is going. So I mean, I would definitely look into that if you're in a deeper league, plugging in CJ Anderson there if you're kind of weak there with that flex spot. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the running backs there.
yeah, there could certainly be some goal line work for Anderson. So I think there definitely is a potential role for him in this offense. But moving on to wide receivers, I think the Detroit Lions probably have the best matchup of anybody in football right now. The Cardinals are going to be missing Patrick Peterson, and he's the guy that usually shadows the number one receiver. So Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones are going to probably have a field day on this on this defense. So I think if you have either of those guys, you have to find a way to get them into your lineup, whether it's Galladay is your wide receiver two, and then Jones is your flex, or vice versa, depending on how you drafted. So I think you have to do whatever you can to get those two guys in your lineup. I don't really know how Danny Amendola is going to fit into this offense, although we do know that Matt Stafford does throw to the slot. I think you can wait on him, but the top two guys on this team, Galladay and Jones, I think you have to throw them out there this week. On the other side, it's a tricky situation because with a rookie quarterback, I mean, we don't really know what to expect, especially because they downgraded the offense in the offseason. We have yet to see where the chemistry was built between receivers and quarterbacks. So I think if you have Fitzgerald, you could probably throw him out there as a potential flex play. Murray might look to him as a safety valve in this game on that outside, or probably more in the slot. And then Kirk, I don't know. It's weird to think of what Kirk's role is going to be at this point. Although he is in the starting lineup, I think it's still a little early to determine what kind of role he's going to have. So I would probably be wary of putting him as my flex at this point. But I know some people would feel differently.
Yeah, I'm going to start out with Detroit also. Now, I like Kenny Galladay the best this week, as I think he's going to have the most favorable matchup, probably going against Charmaine Brock, aka X49er product right there. And then when you look in the slot, I mean, Amendola, he can finish as a decent wide receiver 3 this week if you really need him. I don't think that there's going to be, too much, high of a ceiling there. However, that is an option. But when you look at the overall receivers for Detroit, my favorite this week is Kenny Galladay. And then when you flip over to the other side of the ball, you have obviously Christian Kirk is going to be the number one receiver for this offense, as Cliff Kingsbury really likes him. And I think that Kirk is a very talented wide receiver. With that being said, he's going to be probably matched up against Darius Slay, who is a good cornerback. So I'm not really crazy about his matchup this week. If I'm going to be playing any of these receivers, like you said, it's probably Larry Fitz. At the end of the day, this guy is father time. He's that probably one of my most favorite consistent flex wide receivers in fantasy football. He's a guy that you can count on for at least 10 PPR points per week, with even more if with that touchdown upside. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the Cardinals receiving core for this week.
Yeah, and if we just touch on the tight ends quick, I think Hawkinson can probably be a top a top 15 guy. So I don't know if you really want to. You probably have a better option than Hawkinson this week. I think there's definitely potential for him to grow more in this offense, but I think we have to really dial back the hype that a lot of fantasy analysts on Twitter were having this offseason because the Lions took Eric Ebron in the top 10 a few years ago and barely used him. So I think we got to wait on really starting him with confidence. And then on the other side, you're not starting the tight end for Arizona, so we got to go into that.
Yeah, I'm staying away from both tight ends this week.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, Hawkinson is a rookie. One of the things that we have to consider when we're looking at rookie tight ends is that they don't typically come into the NFL ready to produce the high fantasy football, volume. Not only that, Stafford is a quarterback that doesn't really target his tight ends. Like you mentioned, Eric Ebron was there, and Eric Ebron really didn't do anything in this offense. He went on to play with Andrew Luck, and he had that amazing season last year. With that being said, then when you look at the other side of the ball, Charles Clay is probably going to be the starting tight end for the Arizona Cardinals. And Clay didn't do anything in Buffalo, so I don't think he's going to do anything with Arizona. So I'm just staying away from this tight end, situation this week for for this game in particular. So that's just my thought there.
You avoid it for good reason. If you want to win, you'll avoid that tight end situation in this game. So.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. All right, so let's move on to the next game, which is the Tampa Bay Bucks versus the San Francisco 49ers. So what do you think about the quarterback situation in this game?
So this one, I'd say is pretty high upside game. This is a game that could potentially reach, a 60-point total. I haven't checked the over under on this game, but I'm sure it's one of the highest of the week, if not the highest of the week. So I think you can feel safe putting Jameis Winston out there. I know that last year he showed the inability to stay on the field and he was very inconsistent. But as we know by now, Jameis Winston can easily throw for 300 yards and nobody would bat an eye. So I think in a game where he goes against a 49ers defense that has added pieces nonetheless, but still not elite level. So I think you can put Jameis Winston out there with confidence, especially with the weapons that he has at his disposal. I think Winston is a safe play this week. If you're really looking for upside, Winston's probably going to be my pick of the week. On the other side, you have Jimmy Garoppolo, who didn't really flash too much post ACL injury in the preseason. He had ups and downs, but this is another guy where if you have I don't know, say Matt Stafford or something. If you want to go for upside, Matt Stafford's upside it's kind of capped this week. But if you really need a top tier guy, I think Jimmy Garoppolo has the potential to finish there just because the Bucs defense is horrendous. They did add Devin White in the draft, but I think Garoppolo's ceiling is much higher than most quarterbacks this week because Bucs, I believe, finished in the bottom 5 in pass defense last year. I think the only exception would be having so many injuries on his receiving corps. So it depends. We also have to see who's going to be playing in this lineup. But Garoppolo honestly has a pretty good matchup this week. So I feel okay putting him out there personally.
Yeah, my favorite quarterback, obviously, out of these two guys is going to be Jameis Winston. Now, when we look up matchups, I think Winston has a very good matchup this week. Yeah, like you mentioned, the 49ers defense does have some good pieces there on that defensive line with Nick Bosa, DeForest Buckner, Thomas there as well, and D Ford. However, Bosa is still, questionable for this game as he's still dealing with that ankle injury. With that being said, then when you look at the secondary for the 49ers, this is a secondary that's really not that great outside of Richard Sherman. They got Akilla Weatherspoon. And then when you look at Jaquaski Tart, he's a decent, strong safety, but he's a guy that deals with injuries a lot. With that being said, he is healthy. But still, I think this is the weakest point of this 49ers defense is the secondary. And then when you look at the linebacking core, I mean, it's all right. This is going to be Fred Warner's second year in the league. He showed good things as a rookie. Hopefully he can develop this year, as I'm a 49er fan, and I'm looking forward to that. And then not only that, but the 49ers went out and signed Quan Alexander, which I think adds more depth to this, 49ers linebacking core. However, Jameis Winston's matchups in the secondary are very good. Not only that, he has very good receivers on this team with Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. And then when you look at the other side of the ball, Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, also has a good matchup this week, as I don't feel like the Bucs defense is, elite. However, like you mentioned, Garoppolo is coming off of an ACL injury. So until I see that Garoppolo really can hit that rhythm, I'm probably not starting him in my fantasy football lineups. As in the preseason, he did demonstrate in a game that he did have some rust. However, in that second game when he played, I think it was like week 3, he was able to put up some good stats. But until I can see that Garoppolo has fully recovered from this ACL injury and is no longer really thinking about getting hit, I don't think I'm going to play him yet, just because I think that psychology there is playing into his overall game, and I think that's going to lower his overall fantasy football ceiling there.
Yeah, I think I was a little optimistic with actually playing him in week 1. I just think the matchup is just so good, but just really taking in the fact that he's coming off this ACL tear. I think there's definitely reason to not want to play him this week. But behind him, we have Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida in the Niners backfield. And I'm sure you saw the other day that Matt Breida is listed as the number 1 running back. So I think you can feel safe putting either of them out there because they're both going to get work. Assuming this is going to be a high-scoring affair like Vegas predicts, both running backs should get a lot of run here. Matt Breida is definitely the better pass-catching back here. So if you had both, I'd probably recommend Matt Breida at this point. But I think putting either of them out in your running back 2 or flex spot should be okay this week. On the other side of the ball, I would really hope you don't have to play Peyton Barber or Ronald Jones because both of them have such a low ceiling in this offense. They just have proven that they're not good running backs. And Bruce Arians he needs like a stud running back in order for his offense to really flourish. So I think if you're going to look to anybody, I'd say look long term and maybe pick up Dario Gumbawale, the third string back who really impressed in preseason. I think that's a guy that could carve out a role for him in this offense. So I would avoid Peyton Barber and Ronald Jones at all costs.
Yeah, I personally like both Tevin Coleman and Breida this week. Obviously, like you mentioned, Breida was listed as the number 1 running back on the 49ers depth chart. However, this doesn't mean that he's going to be, the clear-cut leader when it comes to carries and work. But with that being said, when we're looking at PPR leagues, I think Breida has the highest potential to be a very good running back this season. And then when you look at this matchup in this game, I like it. As I already mentioned, I'm not crazy about the Bucs defense. I think Breida can carve out a really good role in this game, especially because, like you said, this is a potential shootout game. So there's going to be a lot of passing on both sides of the ball. And obviously, if the 49ers are passing a lot, the back to have in this game is going to be Matt Breida. With that being said, I think Coleman could be a solid low end running back 2 this week. Possibly, he can finish as a running back 3 depending on how the game script's going. However, I do like his matchup this week as well. And then when you flip over to Tampa Bay, I mean, I'm also avoiding this running back committee until I know what's going on. Peyton Barber is listed as the starter, but I mean, he was a starter last season. The guy really didn't do anything. I think he had like 5 touchdowns last season. So I mean, he's really not a running back that's going to really make you want to put him in your starting fantasy football lineup. And then you got Ronald Jones there as well. This is a guy that had a lot of buzz in the offseason, but obviously he really didn't play that great as he's not listed as the team's starter. So with that being said, I'm just avoiding this Buccaneers backfield in general until I know what's going on. Maybe it'll clear up later in the season if an injury occurs, but until now, I'm just trying to avoid this Buccaneers backfield as much as possible.
Yeah, I mean, just watching Ronald Jones play, it's he just doesn't look like he knows what he's doing out there. I think the fact that the Bucs took him in the second round, they spent such high draft capital on him that they kind of feel obligated to play him. So I think after this season, if he really doesn't show anything or show any flash of relevance, I think he might find himself on a new team. That point aside, I think we go to the receiving core, starting with the Niners. It's looking kind of bare right now. So we have, I believe it's Marquise Goodwin's probably going to be out there. Dante Pettis is questionable. Jalen Hurts probably not going to play. Trent Taylor's going to be out, so we might see Deebo Samuel as well step up and take a role in this game. I probably avoid this Niners receiving core in this game just because of all the injuries and not knowing what to expect and who Garoppolo is going to be targeting and how confident he's going to be in his own arms. So I think if you had to pick an option, my pick would be Marquise Goodwin, just because at the end of the 2017 season when Garoppolo won like 6 games in a row, Goodwin was his favorite target. He was averaging around like 8 to 10 targets a game. So I think that's probably the best play there. The Bucs, you're playing Mike Evans. You're playing Chris Godwin. Behind that, I don't really see anybody that's really worth mentioning. At least playing at this point in this season, you probably have better options than the third string receivers on the Bucs. But I'd say Mike Evans and Chris Godwin have a lead upside this week against a very bad Niners secondary, with the exception of Richard Sherman.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said. When we look at the 49ers receiving core, obviously Dante Pettis has the most potential to succeed in this offense. However, one thing that we have to remember is that Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard were in control of this offense last season. So there's no telling if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be targeting Dante Pettis as much as those quarterbacks were. And like you also said, Goodwin was Garoppolo's favorite target up until, Garoppolo got injured. So with that being said, I think Goodwin is probably the best bet to play for the 49ers, receiving core, as he has a good rapport with Jimmy Garoppolo. Not only that, he's healthy. I know last year he was banged up a little bit. He also was dealing with some personal issues, which is why he wasn't really on the field and available. But with that being said, I think Goodwin can carve out a good role on this team, and I really like his matchup against the Buccaneers secondary this week. And then, like you said, Trent Taylor, I don't think he's going to be playing. Probably see Richie James there in the slot. Also, you'll probably see some Deebo, like you said. Deebo's a rookie. We don't really know what his role is going to be in this offense, but that's definitely a guy to keep your eye on. It's also a potential waiver wire pickup. So
Maybe
that's
Kendrick Bourne too. Kendrick Bourne might see some run. I remember he got some reps at the end of the season last year too. I mean, but I don't think he's going to add too much.
especially when you're looking at Kyle Shanahan. I just think he's going to be rotating all these receivers in as he likes to keep his receivers nice and fresh. But with that being said, yeah, that's just my thoughts on the 49ers receiving core. I like Goodwin the most. Pettis obviously has the most upside. However, we don't know who Garoppolo's favorite target's going to be, so we're going to have to wait on a little bit with that one. And then when you flip
He's
on the
dealing with that groin injury too.
yeah, he's dealing with that groin injury. So we don't know how healthy he is right now. But when you flip over to the other side, I think that Evans and Chris Godwin are both very good plays this week. I already mentioned, you mentioned this. Richard Sherman's the best, defender on this team. When you look at Goodwin in the slot. I'm sorry, I don't know why I keep on saying Goodwin. When you look at Chris Godwin in the slot, he has really good, matchup this week. You look at Mike Evans on that outside. Ahkello Witherspoon will probably be on him because Sherman doesn't really leave that one side of the field. So Evans definitely has the potential. Definitely, he's going to be a wide receiver one this week. I think Chris Godwin is going to be a very good wide receiver two this week, depending on how much Winston is going to be targeting him. So I'm playing both of these guys, considering the fact that this is going to be a high scoring affair. And that's just what I think there.
Yeah, and continuing the high scoring affair storyline, we have both the tight ends. You're going to be playing George Kittle for obvious reasons. I think it goes back to the fact that Nick Mullins was the guy that was targeting Kittle so much last season. So I think there's definitely a little bit of a mystery behind how Jimmy G is going to use George Kittle in this offense. But I'm sure after seeing what he was able to do, Kyle Shanahan's going to try and factor more into the game plan. Jimmy G early in the offseason compared George Kittle to Rob Gronkowski. So I think right there that alone is a good enough comparison to show that he's going to get work. He's going to get a lot of work this season. So definitely in a game like this against a horrible defense, George Kittle is a set it and forget it guy. On the other side, you have OJ Howard, and this is a guy that is also a little bit of question marks considering that Winston has shown while he has shown that he does sort of the tight ends. Bruce Arians is not a guy that is apt to doing that. And also Winston was usually the guy it was throwing to Cameron Braid out there. So while OJ Howard is a much better athlete and better tight end overall, I think there's a little bit of question marks around that too, being week one. But I still think you can feel safe putting OJ Howard up there as your tight end spot.
Yeah, I think both of these tight ends are going to finish as tight end ones this week. As I already mentioned, that this is going to be a shootout, high scoring affair. I think there's going to be a lot of passing involved for both teams. With that being said, my favorite tight end, this might be my bias as a 49er fan, but I really like George Kittle better than OJ Howard in this game, just because when you look at the 49ers offense, Kittle is no doubt the number one target for this team. So he's going to see the volume. He's going to get his targets, and I think he's going to eat against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. And then when you look at OJ Howard, this is a guy that he's also in a good situation to succeed this week. I think he's going to be also a tight end one. So I mean, you're not going to be taking him out of your lineup this week, and that's just my thoughts on the tight ends there.
I don't even think it's a bias that Kittle's the better matchup. I think most of the time he's going to have the better matchup overall just because he's just so good.
All right, so let's move on to this division game, the Cowboys versus the New York Giants.
So on one side, you got Dak Prescott, who has yet to be paid of all the superstars in Dallas. So I still think you could feel safe putting him out there. I don't know why. I don't think he's ever shown enough flash to be paid $40 million, but he's okay in fantasy. So I think he probably finishes in the top 15 this week against a pretty bad Giants defense that's ranked like around middle of the pack in pass defense last season. So I think he's a safer play this week, especially in a division game. On the other side, you're not playing Eli Manning, so I don't think we even need to discuss that.
Yeah, definitely.
Jones might come in the game. Who knows?
I don't know about yet. Eli's not going out without a fight. I know that for a
Yeah.
fact. When you look at matchup wise, I like Prescott's matchup more than Eli Manning for some obvious reasons. Number one, the Giants defense isn't that great. Also, when you look at the Cowboys situation this week, they just signed Ezekiel Elliott back. And with that being said, Elliott really hasn't been around this team. He says that he's ready, but we really don't know. As you know, you can be training as much as possible, but in game speed and training and with the hitting and all that, you really don't know how ready Elliott is. So Prescott, might be throwing the ball a lot more, and the Dallas Cowboys might be running the ball a lot less. And then with that being said, just Eli Manning, you're not playing him this week. It's just plain and simple.
Going back to the running backs, I think it's tough to really gauge what's going to go on in the backfield as far as who's going to get the set amount of touches. I think as you get closer to game time, you have to pay attention to reports coming out of the Dallas Cowboys organization of whether or not they're going to feel comfortable putting Zeke out there with very, very limited practice time. But you figure he's getting paid all this money. He knows the offense. He's probably going to be good enough to go out and play Sundays.
He's definitely going to play. I read that they were saying that he just isn't going to get as much snaps as he would if he would have been game day ready. So that's just my concern there.
I feel like this week Tony Pollard might have a flex role for himself just because of what he showed in the offseason. I think they still took him in the third round, so I still think they're going to want to use him a decent amount. So I think they can definitely build into a Todd Gurley, Darrell Henderson of what we at least expect out of that offense, where you have a running back go on the first, second down, and then Tony Pollard maybe come in every now and then for a third down play because he was very good in the preseason. So I don't think he's just going to get forgotten once the regular season comes. And on the Giants side of the ball, you're playing Saquon Barkley. So once again, we don't really need to go into that. It's a good matchup.
Definitely.
It's a decent matchup, but it's Barkley, so you're playing him.
Dude, Barkley, he's going to eat. We obviously made a bold claim earlier in the summer. We said that we don't think he's going to finish as the number one overall fantasy football running back. If you haven't checked out that video yet, you should definitely go check it out. As I thought it was a really good video. We had a good discussion about that. But with that being said, I personally don't think Ezekiel Elliott is going to be, too much of a factor in this game. As I already mentioned, they were talking about limiting his total snaps. Therefore, I think that Tony Pollard could be, a flex play in a deeper league, if you really need a running back or just a flex option there. Just because of the fact that Elliott might not be game day ready. Not only that, like you already said, Pollard is a very good all around back. I think he has more potential in the passing game than Elliott does, so he might carve out a decent role there in the passing game. And then when you flip onto the other side of the ball with the New York Giants, yeah, Barkley has a tough matchup this week, but it doesn't matter. Barkley, as long as he's healthy, he's playing, he's going to see the volume, and he is the MVP of this team, so he's going to eat no matter what defense he's going against. You got to play Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, he might go out there and die, but the Cowboys or the Giants are going to use him until he's no longer usable. So he's going to be out there and he's going to get the volume. So yeah, you're playing Barkley. So going to the receivers, going back to Dallas, Amari Cooper said that he's good enough to play now and not dealing with the plantar fasciitis issue that he was going through in the preseason. So you can throw Amari Cooper out there against a very very average Giants defense. Michael Gallup's another guy that you can potentially throw on the flex. I think we shouldn't expect too much out of him just because Amari Cooper is going to be the guy getting all the targets, and you figure they're probably going to lean more on the run with Zeke and Pollard this week. So Gallup's upside is really capped unless an injury happens to Amari Cooper. On the other side, Sterling Shepard is a guy that I guess you could put in your wide receiver too if you had no other option. But once again, I would say he's a flex play just because this team is going to lean on Saquon Barkley at all times, and then if they're passing, it's most likely going to be funneled through Evan Engram. So I think there's a lot to not like on the Giants receiving core. So I wouldn't really even think about touching any of them at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. When we look at the Dallas Cowboys side of the ball, obviously Amari Cooper is a must start this week. He's most likely going to be matched up against rookie cornerback DeAndre Baker. So obviously that is a plus for Cooper, as he's going to have that, veteran advantage over Baker. So he's going to definitely take advantage of that matchup. Then when you look at Michael Gallup, he'll probably be against Janoris Jenkins. I'm not really crazy about this matchup, as I really don't feel like Gallup is that good of a wide receiver. However, with that being said, I'm not going to play him this week if I had him on my team. And then when you move over to that third wide receiver spot for the Dallas Cowboys, you got Randall Cobb. Now, I think Randall Cobb could be an X factor in this game. This is a guy that pretty much was discarded by the Green Bay Packers over the course of the offseason, and I think he's got a lot, to prove this year. I think he's going to come out and try to show that he can still play, and I think he can turn out to be a viable passing option for Dak Prescott throughout the course of the season. With that being said, Cobb could be, a flex play, a wide receiver 3, I think, this week. And then when you look at the other side of the ball with the New York Giants, I think that Shepard is obviously probably the best bet to start on your fantasy football team. Probably be a wide receiver 2 this week. But other than that, I'm not really touching any of the other, Giants receivers this week, as the Dallas Cowboys do have a very good defense.
Yeah, they have a really good defense. So this is probably going to be a closer game just because it's divisional, and the divisional games usually are close in scores. So I wouldn't expect too high scoring of a game here. Just a quick dive into the tight ends. Jason Witten is I don't know. I wouldn't play Jason Witten if I were anybody else out there. You probably have a better option. Just because he's older. Prescott hasn't played with him for a full season or so. So he might finish with 3 to 4 catches for like 20 yards because he's always been that guy that just kind of gets open on third down and makes that play. So maybe he gets like 1 or 2 red zone targets, but after that, I really kind of see him as an afterthought in this offense at this point. And on the other side, yeah, Evan Engram, you're going to play him because you probably drafted him as a top 4 tight end. So he's going to get a lot of the targets. So I think you can feel safe putting Evan Engram out there this week. I think he's definitely an elite play for sure.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to disagree with you on the fact that I actually think that could possibly be a high-scoring game, just because it is a division game and it is the first division game. Usually when you look at division games, the first one is the highest scoring one, and then the second time around when the teams play each other, it's usually a more tightly contested game because, those teams have film on one another and they can better game plan against each other. But also, I think that Jason Witten could be I think he could be a tight end too this week. When you look at his situation, this is a guy that took off of a year of football to really probably get his body right. Not only that, he had the time to really study the game as he was a broadcaster during last season. So you definitely would imagine that he's probably picked up some, new tips and wants to try out some new tricks. And not only that, he's going against New York. Now, this is a division game, like we said. And he usually plays good in these division games against New York and Philly. So I think that he could be a decent tight end too there for this week if you're really hurting for a tight end. And then when you flip on to the other side of the ball, with New York. Obviously, Evan Ingram is a must start this week. He's going to be a tight end one. Now, New York has openly come out and said that this guy is going to be featured heavily in this offense. The problem is, can he stay healthy? But with that being said, I think he's going to be, out of all the receivers, like including Sterling Shepard and all those other guys, he's going to be the target hog for this offense. And I think he's going to see the most volume in the passing game out of all the other options on this team. So I definitely like Evan Ingram this week.
Yeah, Evan Ingram is going to be the man behind Barkley in this offense. So, um, yeah, he's a set and forget it guy. So.
Let's move on to this Sunday night primetime game, New England versus Pittsburgh. What do you think of the quarterback situation here?
So it's tough just because they're both guys that everybody knows. They're both elite in real life. But as far as fantasy is concerned, I think Brady's probably going to be the safer option. See, Big Ben has shown that he's not very good when it's away from home. So the home and away splits, not just throughout his career, but really just last season, he's really showing his age. And when he goes away from Heinz Field, his numbers drop tremendously. So while I would say that his receiving core is still pretty solid, I think the loss of Antonio Brown is definitely going to hurt his overall upside. So I would probably look elsewhere this week if I had other options. Brady is definitely going to be the safer guy for me just because he has guys out there that he knows he can trust in Edelman and Gordon as well. Gordon's definitely going to be out there. So I think Brady's going to be the safer guy. Both teams are probably going to run a fair amount in this game, but if I had to choose, I'd probably choose Brady.
Yeah, if I would have to choose between these two quarterbacks, I would probably choose Brady as well. However, like you also said, I think that this is going to be a game that is going to feature the running backs heavily, more so than the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and so on and so forth. But when you look at Ben Roethlisberger's matchup, it's not that it's not that bad also. But when you look at, like you said, AD is no longer with this team. So Ben Roethlisberger is really going to have to find new receiving options on his team. Obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster there is going to pick up some of the slack that AB left behind from last season. However, when you look at all these other receiving options, there's question marks there. And not only that, Bill Belichick's defense, it is good. Like he's a defensive minded coach at the end of the day. I know he's also, really good offensive minded coach, but he specializes, shutting down those number one options for the opposite, opposing team. So, I mean, I would rather have Brady there than Ben Roethlisberger this week. However, Ben Roethlisberger, I don't think is that bad of a play, considering the fact that this is a very good game, prime time. Obviously, a lot of scoring potential there. Not only that, these are two AFC juggernauts going against each other, two AFC playoff contenders, and this might be a preview of the AFC Championship game. You never really know.
Yeah, no, I agree. I worry about Ben away from home, but I mean, it's prime time, the first game of the season. And I think you still feel safe putting him out there. But I think this is a good transition into the running backs in this game. James Conner has, if we go off the preseason snaps alone, was the lead guy out there. There wasn't really any Jalen Samuels to be found. And James Conner has proven that he's not really a bad pass catching back overall anyway. So he's going to get a lot of work in this game. I think he's a set it and forget it RB1 this week for sure. On the other side, I think Brady is the safer option at quarterback because the Patriots have shown that they want to run the ball a lot. I think they definitely proved that fact by taking Damian Harris as the insurance policy to the guy that's only in his second year, and Sony Michel. So Michel definitely an RB2 this week with upside as starting running back in this offense if he stays in the field. James White has the potential to go in there because it's going to be a high-scoring game. So I'd still think he has RB2 potential. Maybe flex if you have the ability to put him there, but if you don't, then I'd still say I'd feel okay putting him on my RB2 spot, just because this is going to be a game that probably touches in the 60-point total, if not more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously like James Conner as a solid RB1 this week. When you look at Jalen Samuels, I mean, I think you're going to wait to start him. There's a rumor that there's going to be a committee approach in Pittsburgh, but when you look at the head coach's history with the running backs in general, this is a coach that doesn't really implement a running back committee. So that might have just been rumors. We won't know till the season really starts. Not only that, I went throughout the offseason, I was reading stuff and they were saying that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to implement a committee one week. The next week they were saying they weren't. Then they were saying that they were kind of testing things out. So, I mean, I think obviously James Conner is going to be the play week in and out for this Steelers offense. However, Samuels could possibly carve out a decent role in the passing game in the future. Not only that, you look at the Steelers offensive line. This is one of the league's best offensive lines. They got Villanueva, Foster, Pouncey, and DeCastro. So this is a team that likes to run the ball, and it's because of their offensive line is so good. And then when you move on to the other side of the ball, I agree with you that I think the Patriots are going to also utilize their backs a lot in this game. And I also think that the New England Patriots are going to be running the ball a lot this year. Brady's getting up there in age. They're going to try to preserve him as long as possible. And with two, very good running backs in James White and Sony Michel. Not only that, they drafted rookie running back Damian Harris. I mean, why not feed these guys? But I like Sony Michel in this game. The New England Patriots have said that they're going to feed him early and often. It's only a matter of whether or not his knees can really hold up and take that volume. But with that being said, I think that Sony Michel is a good play this week. I don't know if he finishes as an RB1. I definitely think he's going to finish as a very good RB2. And then I think James White could also, be a very good flex option this week as they are going against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So again, there's that potential shootout there. And obviously we know that James White is the PPR running back to own there. So that's just my thoughts there on the running back situation for this Sunday night game. All right, Brandon. So what do you think about the receivers for this game?
All right, so starting on the Steelers side of the ball, you're playing Juju Smith-Schuster because he's got the best role in as a wide receiver probably in football. So you're definitely throwing him out there, even if he's going to be going against the better cornerbacks potentially if he lines up on the outside. But as we've seen Juju to do, he lines up in the slot a fair amount. So I think the Steelers are going to use him in various roles in this offense. So he shouldn't see Stephon Gilmore as much as AB did last year. So you're throwing him out there. At this point in the season, Dante Moncrief is going to be the guy that you want to put as your number two in the Steelers offense. If you want to risk that, we know that the Steelers' number two wide receiver has seen a lot of targets, as we saw that in recent memory. Moncrief is going to be the guy this week. Who knows if James Washington could potentially be that guy in the future, but Moncrief is going to be the guy this week, so you're putting him out there. Anybody else behind that, I really wouldn't risk putting Washington out there. Deontay Johnson's probably not going to see the field, so those two are the guys that I would play from this offense. On the other side, Edelman said that he's pretty good to go as far as even having the broken thumb, so he should be good to go. Gordon's going to be another guy that's a really high ceiling like Edelman with targets and such, but Gordon's going to be the long play guy. So I think you can feel safe putting both of them out there as high-end wide receiver twos. Maybe Gordon's ceiling is a little bit more capped, but Edelman's going to see the targets, and Gordon should also see the targets. So there's really a lot to like here, especially in a high-scoring game like this.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think obviously you're starting Juju Smith-Schuster this week, despite the fact that he's going to probably be matched up against Stephon Gilmore, who is one of the best shadow corners in the league. However, when you look at the situation of the game, you really can't sit him, as the majority of the offensive targets are going to go to Juju Smith-Schuster. But the question is he going to be, productive this week? I think you still got to play him. Obviously, his ceiling isn't as high as it's going to be in other matchups throughout the season. However, I really think that Juju Smith-Schuster has a safe floor this year, just considering the other wide receiver weapons for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then when you look at Moncrief, yeah, Moncrief is the wide receiver too in this offense, but I'm not convinced yet that he's going to really be that second option for this team. So I don't know if I'm going to be playing Moncrief this week. The guy that I think that you guys should be, considering starting as a flex, if you need a flex player there, not even that, or a DraftKings lineup, is James Washington. Now, this is a guy that has been very productive in the preseason. Obviously, he didn't play a lot with Big Ben. However, with AB gone, there needs to be another wide receiver option outside of Juju Smith-Schuster, and I think that James Washington is going to have a serious opportunity to establish himself as that number two option in this offense. As we see that Pittsburgh in general features two wide receivers in their offense, like they don't just focus on one wide receiver in particular. So that's definitely a guy to keep on your radar. And then when you look at the other side of the ball, obviously Julian Edelman is the number one option on this team. However, I don't know if Julian Edelman's ceiling this year is going to be as good as it was last year, considering the fact that Josh Gordon is back on this team. Not only that, Demaryius Thomas is there. So I think that's going to affect his overall targets, as Edelman is mostly a slot guy. When you look at his situation last year, he was pretty much the only guy in this offense, which is why he ate, especially, down the stretch. Not only that, he's dealing with that broken thumb. So I don't know how involved he's going to be in this offense for this week. However, he's probably a decent, wide receiver to play. With that being said, Josh Gordon, I don't really love his matchup either. He's probably going to be matched up against Joe Hayden, who is a very, underrated cornerback in my opinion. So I'm not in love with that matchup there. However, he could be, a flex play this week, but we really don't even know what his role is in this offense yet. Like, this is a guy that just joined the team. Obviously, like we mentioned in our Josh Gordon video, this is a guy that probably needs to gain the trust back of the, New England Patriots organization in general. So I would just wait on him. But a guy that I think that could be, a sleeper play this week for the New England Patriots is Demaryius Thomas. Now, this is a guy that's going to be reunited with Josh McDaniels as they were together, in that big Denver season back when Peyton Manning was the quarterback. So, I mean, this is a guy that I think you should keep your eye out on, especially considering the fact that he's going to be, paired up again with Josh McDaniels. Not only that, he has a good quarterback in Tom Brady. So I think that he can be an X factor in this game, to be honest. But that's just my personal opinion there on the wide receivers.
Yeah, I just think with the lack of Gronkowski and Chris Hogan being there is just going to open the field up more for these outside guys to make some noise. So I think there's definitely room for growth for as far as Gordon goes. But yeah, I would agree that Edelman's ceiling is kind of capped just because they did add some weapons. And who knows if maybe Jacoby Myers see some play.
Honestly, you know what I would like to see the New England Patriots do? I think they should put Myers in that tight end spot. I mean, I think that he could have some serious fantasy, potential there if they would just move him in that tight end spot, as they're hurting for a tight end. I really don't think that the New England Patriots tight ends are going to be that effective this year. And I think Jacoby Myers could do some serious damage at that tight end position.
I've never heard of that, so that's interesting. That's an interesting take on it.
Bro, I mean, it's Bill Belichick. Anything can happen. I honestly would love to see that.
Certainly.
I think that that's very possible, especially if these, white ends aren't doing anything in this offense. I think Bill Belichick's going to have to get very creative, but that's just a little side tangent there. Let's move on to the tight ends. Which tight ends do you like in this game?
So Vance McDonald's definitely going to be the play here, although his snaps are going to be capped because the coach did come out and say that he's not going to play any more than he did last year. He's still going to be the tight end out there on a team that's going to be passing, a pretty decent amount. So with a lot of targets up for grabs, I still think you can feel safe putting McDonald out there as a low end tight end one this week. Just because it's a high scoring game, I don't think you should have any worry. On the other side, we've seen in recent memory that Brady does not really throw to the tight ends unless they're named Rob Gronkowski. So regardless of who it is, you shouldn't be playing. We saw this with Martellus Bennett. Everybody was getting hyped about him being there, and he did next to nothing. So I think that's just going to continue on until they get another stud tight end to draft or maybe trade. Vance McDonald is definitely the only tight end in this game that I would personally play.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Vance McDonald obviously is the tight end to play in this game. I don't know if you remember last year. I think it was against the New England Patriots when he had that crazy stiff arm. He caught like a short pass, stiff armed the dude, and he had a crazy play. Other than that, I really like his matchup. Also, like we mentioned, these receivers, especially Juju Smith-Schuster and Dante Moncrief, they have really tough matchups. So, I mean, Big Ben's probably going to have to go elsewhere in this game. And I think McDonald and James Washington are really going to be targeted in this game a lot. Just because of the matchup for the outside receivers. And then on the other side of the ball, I'm just not touching the New England Patriots tight ends until I know what's going on. There's nothing really there that appeals me. So that's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's all. That's all I got to say. I agree.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude today's episode of Simply Better Fantasy Football. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed today's episode. Please let us know in the comment section below what you thought of today's video.
Yeah, definitely stay tuned with the football season beginning this week. We got a lot to say, so hopefully you guys are still interested and want to stick around. So definitely hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, leave a like. Definitely keep coming back and checking our channel for updates.
Yeah, also, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask us, as we would be more than happy, to help you guys out throughout this 2019 fantasy football season. But with that being said, I don't have anything left to say. Do you, Brandon?
Nope, good to go.
All right, so this is the SBFF crew signing off. Peace.
Peace.